So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I know it's a little later, but I know we all have stuff after school for the most part. Today, we will explore important legal and ethical responsibilities in education. This presentation is divided into four key topics: search and seizure, Alabama Educator Code of Ethics, teaching licenses, and teacher liability. Let's begin with student topics. The first student topic is search and seizure. The Fourth Amendment protects individuals from unreasonable searches and seizures, and this applies to students in schools as well. However, in a school environment, this protection is balanced with the need to maintain safety and order. So, when looking at key principles related to search and seizure, it's important to know that school officials require reasonable suspicion rather than probable cause to conduct searches. For example, a search can be justified by observable behavior or credible reports of rule violations. These must be specific to individual students. So, in loco parentis grants, schools certain authority over students, but with limits. There must be individual suspicion. Overall, school searches require less suspicion than law enforcement searches, but they must still be reasonable and target individual students suspected of wrongdoing. So there have been several important cases, but the most notable case is New Jersey versus TLO, which established the reasonable suspicion standard for school searches. Another case, Safford Unified School District versus Reading, highlighted the need for searches to be proportional to suspected offenses, especially in sensitive scenarios like strip searches. Desolates versus Clearview Board of Education, courts determined that students and their property can be searched during off-campus events such as field trips. So some best practices for educators to ensure compliance, schools should have clear policies based searches on specific facts. Match the search to the level of the threat, match the search to the area of the suspected items, document all actions, involve witnesses, and communicate with parents. School staff should avoid overly intrusive searches unless there is immediate threat. So, some consequences, safeguards, and scenarios. Unlawful searches can lead to evidence being inadmissible in court, and teachers and other staff can face legal charges for violating students' rights. To protect school and staff, there should be a written policy. So, for example, this student who created this slide said that their school has one in the code of conduct, and their resource officers follow the precedent by um, New Jersey versus TLO that I talked about a minute ago. There should also be training for any staff member involved in searches, and documentation should be kept. In specific scenarios, including desks, lockers, backpacks, student cars, and strip searches, there must always be reasonable suspicion, but searches require the threat of immediate danger. So, the do's and don'ts listed here summarize all the key points related to search and seizures. Just always remember that any search must be based on reasonable and specific suspicion. The next student topic is Alabama Educator Code of Ethics. The Alabama Code of Ethics guides educators in creating a supportive environment where students can thrive. Its principles focus on integrity, respect, equity, and student welfare. Key principles and laws Educators must adhere to the Alabama Code of Ethic and legal mandates such as mandatory reporting, the IDEA, and anti-discrimination laws. Ethical principles require educators to maintain professional boundaries and prioritize student welfare. Some important cases dealing with this. Many of these key cases related to ethics, such as State versus Bailey and State versus Thomas. They stem from sexual misconduct and led to the convictions of teachers. Another important case is the State of Alabama versus Harris, where an educator failed to report visible child abuse, leading to suspension and potential criminal charges under mandatory reporting laws. In an important educational equity case, which was San Antonio ISD versus Rodriguez in 1973, the Supreme Court ruled there was no constitutional right to equal education, which led to the pursuit disparities in educational funding. So this case really brought to light the ethical issues that were seen not only in 1973, but also today. So people still use this case when talking about ethics in education. Best practices for educators. The best practices in aligned with the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics involves respecting student dignity, protecting confidentiality, and maintaining professionalism. Adhering to these practices while setting professional boundaries and maintaining integrity, honesty, self-reflection, and open communication ensures a safe and equitable environment for learning. So consequences, protections, and or safeguards. Violating the Alabama Code of Ethics has serious consequences, including suspension, certifications to be revoked, termination, or even criminal prosecution for legal activities like abuse. At the same time, educators are protected through due process, retaliation safeguards for whistleblowers, and fair investigations of complaints. Student safety is top priority, supported by clear ethical standards and accountability systems. Mandatory reporting ensures abuse or neglect and addressed with investigations handled by the State Department of Education. So those were the student topics. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay. So the next topic, we're leading into the teacher topics. The first topic is teaching licenses and contracts. So in Alabama, obtaining a teaching license typically involves completing a bachelor's degree, praxis exams, and an approved educational program. Alternative routes are available, such as Troops to Teachers programs for veterans. Teachers gain tenure after 3 consecutive years in some school systems. Tenure provides job security and due process rights, which help protect teachers from unjust dismissal. Gaining tenure is something that many teachers look forward to. However, it is important to know that you must be employed by October 1st for a year to count towards your 3-year towards tenure. Also, any teaching on emergency or alternative certificate does not count towards your tenure year. Some key principles. Some key legal issues that educators face, including fulfilling obligations, understanding tenured protection and non-renewal, avoiding discrimination and harassment, respecting freedom of speech, and knowing your rights around collective bargaining. Fair hiring practices, keeping students' needs at center, maintaining professional competence, and ensuring equity in resource allocations are all important ethical issues. And then there are several laws that directly impact teacher employment in Alabama, including the Alabama Code of Education, the Students First Act, IDEA, and Section 504. Some key cases, some landmark court cases have shaped education law, one being Allen versus Alabama State Board of Education, 1997. This addressed racial discrimination in teacher certification test resolved by a consent decree. Pickens County Board of Education versus Keesler in 2004 reinforced Alabama's tenures law by reinstating a teacher dismissed unfairly during a probationary period. And then Lee versus Macon County in 1967. This ended school segregation in Macon County. So best practices for educators. As for best practices, understanding your contract is very important. Know the terms, keep thorough documentation, and adhere to the conditions. For legal matters, familiarize yourself with applicable laws, avoid liability, and seek legal counsel when necessary. For tenure, know the policies, demonstrate competency, and stay accountable. And then to protect your career, join professional associations, regularly attend trainings, and always be respectful and helpful to those that you work with. So some protections and safeguards. Teaching is incredibly rewarding, but also demanding. So staying professional, setting boundaries, maintaining strong classroom management, and treating everyone ethically are key to long-term success. The next topic is liability and teachers. This is the final topic that we'll be covering. So liability arises when negligence or misconduct by a school or teacher results in harm to a student. Teachers are responsible for providing proper supervision and ensuring safety under the principle of loco parentis. There we go. Several court cases deal with liability in education. Hoseman versus Oakland Unified School District, a teacher successfully sued after being attacked, which demonstrates a school's duty to protect its staff. In Doe versus Taylor in 1994, schools were held liable for deliberate indifference in a student abuse case. Wood versus Strickland established immunity for officials acting in good faith unless bad faith is proven. Carey versus Fifus established that students need to prove actual harm to claim damages for due process violations. And then lastly, Titus and Lindbergh held that governmental immunity protected a district in a teacher's injury case during a student fight. So some best practices. To minimize liability, know your responsibilities as a mandatory reporter and follow HERPA guidelines. Stay updated on school policies, discipline rules, and education laws through training. Supervise students diligently in all settings and adhere to field trip and safety protocols. Avoid risky situations, keep clear records, and maintain professional boundaries. Understand your district's insurance protections or consider additional coverage through professional organizations. So some safeguards that go along with this. Teachers face serious consequences for liability, including lawsuits, criminal charges, license suspension, or job loss for misconduct or neglect. However, protection exists. Liability insurance is often provided by Districts or organizations and teachers are entitled to due process before disciplinary actions. To protect yourself, make sure you follow school policy, keep documentation, avoid easily misconstrued situations, and keep open lines of communications. So, in conclusion, both students and educators have essential rights and responsibilities. For students, the Fourth Amendment protects against unreasonable search and seizures, but schools can act with reasonable suspicion to maintain safety. Students' best interests are protected by the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics. For teachers, maintaining professionalism under the Alabama Educator Code of Ethics is critical. Educators must follow ethical standards and maintain certifications. Teachers also carry the responsibility of protecting students, as negligence can result in serious legal consequences. Overall, creating a safe, respectful, and productive learning environment requires collaboration. Uh, when educators uphold ethical standards and students respect their rights and responsibilities, schools can become positive places of growth and learning. Thank you for your time.